Transportation Board, 21 February 2023 meeting. I'm glad to have you here, and I will plunge right into the agenda. Let's see, our secretary is not with us, but we hope she will join us or use the video record as what she needs to compose the minutes. The roll call is handled by the video that we see. We see everybody's face. Let's begin with approval of both the agenda and the minutes of the past meeting, which were distributed remarkably soon after the last meeting. So you had plenty of time to look at them this time. Could I take a motion for the approval of both the agenda for this meeting and the minutes of last meeting with any comments that you feel are appropriate?
I'll make a motion for that.
Second. Okay, Taylor. All in favor? Thank you. The agenda and the minutes are approved. Public participation, as usual, is lean because this medium does not seem to work very well for generating public participation. And that would have been the strongest argument, I think, for resuming in-person meetings. But at the last meeting, we voted in favor of continuing in this format for the time being. Alderwoman O'Neill, you are on the agenda next for an update from the City Council. What has happened with respect to transportation or things related thereto?
Thank you very much, Chairman. I do not have a lot to report. I will say one really big piece of news that was presented is that the All-Annapolis shuttle, is that what it's called? Now that I'm writing it down, has been extended to along the Forest Drive corridor, where prior to that, you were not able to get that $2 per person shuttle. You now can, which is exciting. We've been pushing for that since the start because it was leaving our neighbors in Ward 6 and 7 out of the possibility of getting downtown on that shuttle. So that is very exciting. Back in January, we did have a meeting with the Bird folks. They gave their reports. To date, there have been no reported incidences. I know that that was something that a lot of people were questioning because they felt like possibly the reported accidents had increased since the introduction of the Bird bikes and scooters. But the police report that there have been no reported incidences, which is a good thing. They're making changes probably monthly on that. Of course, during this winter time, it's been a little bit slower than it was July through November of last year. And it's looking like there's starting to be an uptick, especially with this nice weather we've had in the last few days. So the Bird scooters and bikes are planning on sticking around even after the garage is open. But the folks at Bird are very receptive to input, questions, any changes that we need to make as far as if we need to make some no park zones and things like that.
Great. I was there for that presentation by Bird, and it was very interesting. We had a side discussion just after that meeting on data. If you'll remember, they presented a slide at the meeting that showed basically all of the trips as a cluster of sort of tracks all over the map. And sometimes these things are called heat maps. They show where the activity is. And we discussed whether it was possible to get even more activity on where the scooters were going, and maybe for other modes of transportation too. And they affirmed what I thought had been the case. It is the case that Google has all this stuff. Everybody's carrying a cell phone nowadays, and so you know where everybody in the city is going.
Right.
But they want money for it. And the Bird people said that it was actually so expensive that they were not able to do all of the data analysis that they wanted to do.
Yeah.
These heat maps can be very useful in mapping out fixed transit. A good transit system consists not only of the agile components that we've been concentrating on lately, but also fixed routes. The fixed routes picking up the heaviest and most dependable portion of all of the travel in the city. And those heat maps would be very useful, it seems to me, when Marcus gets around to redesigning and re-optimizing all of the fixed transit routes. It's nice to know where people are going, and when you map out where the buses ought to go.
Definitely.
So let's see, and let me ask a question. The Forest Drive extension is really interesting for the shuttle. Are either of these services yet extended to the mall?
Not these services, and mostly that's because the mall does not fall within the city limits.
Yep.
But we did do the Annapolis shuttle out to Forest Drive because that's been the biggest request from our residents, was to get out there to that Bay Ridge shopping center and along that pathway there, for them to be able to come into the city. We had a lot of people that were saying, you know, if we can't park in the city because the garage is down, we're going to go out to the town center or to the mall or whatever, instead of trying to find what limited parking, you know, in the city, or driving past the city to get to the Park Place garage.
Yeah. These jurisdictional boundaries, government boundaries, are a constraint that sometimes doesn't map very well into how people actually behave. And I think we know that there's a lot of traffic to medical facilities, to the mall, and Parole, you know, the town center at Parole. And it does seem sensible for the county and the city to get together on these, so that transit services serve those places where people most often go. And that is certainly a place.
Sure. That's definitely something to talk with Marcus about.
Yeah. Well, in fact, he's up next. Would you like to take over, Marcus?
Hi, good evening, everyone. I think what Alderwoman O'Neill was meaning is the Annapolis Go. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So not really a shuttle, but kind of the shuttle service. And it is March 1 that'll take over more of the city as requested. As you know, this started in, I want to say middle of May of last year, 2022, for 14 months, which will take us to the middle of July. We're in the early stages of putting together an RFP to look at the microtransit on-demand services, kind of what the Annapolis Go is doing right now. So I know there's a bit of discussion about expansion as far as time for Annapolis Go and expansion into the county. So there have been some preliminary talks with Anne Arundel County of Annapolis Go going a little bit further in, where they, Anne Arundel County Department of Transportation is working on an MOU, their attorneys along with ours, law department, Ashley Leonard, and we'll see how that pans out in the next several weeks or a couple of months going forward. Let's see, where were we here? Yeah, so March 1 we'll start the expanded routes for the Annapolis Go, and as you know, with it's kind of like the Uber or Lyft, but it's not going to pick you up right where you are, but in the area where it'll tell you how long it'll be and where they'll pick up. And it is $2, and each additional rider is another $1. So a family of 5 can ride for $5 basically where they're being picked up. And right now that line is Route 2, which is Solomon's Island Road, covering all the way back into all of our wards within the city limits. See what else do we have? I don't think she's on as a panelist, but a new team member. Probably some of you met her. Panther Stansberry, joined our team the end of last year as a transportation coordinator, helping out with a lot of our parking and other transportation needs that are going on as we go forward and fine tune some of the things that we were talking about with, you know, the micro transit parking issues, Hillman Garage. There's quite a bit of work to be done as we fine tune and look at redesigning transit fixed route as we know it. Other than that, right now, there's not a whole lot of new to report since our last meeting on January 17th.
Thanks so much for the report. I do have a question. Costs are always annoying to us, but they must be faced. Do you have anything that we could look at, which is a succinct representation of the costs for Annapolis Go, net costs to the city for Annapolis Go, and then also the scooters? I think the scooters may be self-sufficient, but Annapolis Go certainly costs something. Is that correct?
It does. That was put together with the AMRP for the garage to increase the mobility and movement around the downtown. It was originally designed for the Westgate Circle, Park Place, West Street on into town to kind of increase the mobility while the garage was down there, and it just expanded a little bit further, a little bit more. So those monies came from that group. So the Bird bike and scooter, as well as Annapolis Go, comes under that. I'm sure we can find out the information on it. I think planning and zoning, Eric Lashinsky and group there were the leaders for the Bird bike and Bird scooters. They should have that information there. And let me see what we can.
Is that self-sufficient? Are there net funds from the city to Bird for that?
That I'll have to check, because as I mentioned, that was coming through AMRP, but kind of managed through planning and zoning.
Mm-hmm.
And Annapolis Go was at the beginning with the AMRP as well. We're helping to manage it, but we weren't really a key player, I would say, last year, this time coming in, but not sure where that money's came from the city general fund to operate it. But we can definitely check into that and get an answer back to you.
That would be very helpful.
Yeah.
And the expansion down Forest Avenue requires an incremental payment by the city to the contractor?
Yes.
You don't remember that number off the top
That
of
I
your
don't know, but I can check for both of those this week and see if I get an answer back to you. We can share with the team.
The representation of this is being paid for by the contract. To some people, sounds as though this isn't a cost to the city, but of course it is. And whether it comes directly from the general fund or from the capital account for the garage acquisition, ultimately the city pays one way or the other.
Exactly.
And it would be nice to know what the numbers are. When we're comparing it, for example, to expansion or alteration of the fixed routes, we have pretty solid numbers for those. But the other numbers tend to get lost in the noise of contractual complications. And if you could clarify that, it would really be helpful.
Sure. Let's see what we can get there for us.
Great.
Kwaku might have some information there. I see he's raised his hand. He might have some they can add in.
Sure. Regarding the Annapolis Go, it's fully paid for as part of the cost of the parking garage. So it doesn't cost the city in terms of cash. But
Well, it does cost, though. I mean, it's amortized, but it's still a number, and it would be nice to know what that number is.
Okay. So that's what we know. The city didn't put up funds to pay for that. It's part of the contract.
Well, we paid the contract, though.
Yeah.
We paid for the contract.
The bad thing, my understanding is that they do it themselves. They do get their revenue through advertising on the scooters. Again, to the best of my knowledge, there is no cost to the city for doing that. If there is a
That was my
backward
impression
course,
too.
that's
The
fine.
fees are high. In fact, they're high enough that people complain
Yeah.
about them. And I think the scooters are self-sufficient. They either fly or not, according to whether they can continue as a self-sustaining model.
Yeah.
Huh. All right. Well, that's it for our Department of Transportation, I guess. Any other questions before we move on?
I have my
Yes,
hand raised.
Rhonda?
Yes.
Oh, I think,
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank
these
you, Mr.
hands are not that easy to see. My apologies.
That's
Go.
okay. That's all right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one question, either for Director Moore or Deputy Director Dr. Dua. I have a question. If you all have a flyer or something I can send out to my Ward 3 residents, especially that addresses Annapolis Go, where does it go? What is, where they can pick it up, how do they access it? I will put that out there to my residents if you all have anything like that that I can send out.
Yeah, I think there was a press release through Mitchell that might be online. I'll look for it. I thought I saw something just a couple days ago. Maybe as early as Friday or late as Friday, as early as today. But I'll look again, Rhonda, and if I see it, I'll pass it along.
Great. Thank you so much. And I'll send that, excuse me, I'll send that out right away once I receive it from you, Director Moore. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great.
Marcus, I have
And-
a question.
Yes,
Uh,
Carol?
I'm just curious, in your discussions about the expansion of Annapolis Go, which is now going to happen on the 1st of March, what were those three-way discussions? Did you physically meet with the Go people and the county people about their
Yes.
role?
Yes, we met with the Annapolis Go, the project team that put it together last year this time. Eileen Fogarty, I believe, was a part of that meeting as well. I'm trying to think who others, most likely was Kwaku, myself, and there might have been others from the city. I'm not sure, David Gerald, Eileen Fogarty, I'm not sure who all, but we did have a bunch of folks going back as late as after Thanksgiving, late November, early December, and trying to figure out how we would do this, incorporate all the needs without increasing, the cost to them, kind of thing. And what they have now with the 4 vehicles, the average wait time they're saying is like 13 to 16 minutes. How much that will increase that without having to increase the number of vehicles, drivers, and all that stuff. Looking at where the biggest pickup and drop offs, which are obviously downtown. So yeah, we did have meetings. I'm sorry.
Were county officials involved in those discussions?
Not in the ones for the city of Annapolis. The county has been in conversation with our attorney with Ashley Leonard and Jason, I forgot his last name, assistant county attorney, when you starting to go into the county across Route 2. So there's almost 2 different segments here. This first part is for the city of Annapolis, March 1. There is discussion going on about expansion to the mall, to the hospital, and then, the name Annapolis Go and how that'll work out, and that kind of stuff. So that's where the county has been in conversation with the city recently.
And so far, those discussions are still at the legal and the procedural level, right? You're not.
Exactly. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And then finally, I guess, just before leaving you, I want to remind members of the board that Director Marcus Moore has scheduled a session with us to discuss several things tomorrow afternoon. And those who can make it with me, we'd love to have you join. Yes, Rhonda?
Yes, one more thing I would like to bring to everyone's attention, especially in the public, that the north-south jurisdictional line for the city and the county runs straight through the middle of Walgreens. The eastern part of Walgreens is in the city, and the western part of that building of Walgreens itself is in the county. So I call it an artificial line, but a lot of people don't know about it. Oftentimes, if there's an issue, the city and the county, whether it's fire, police, will show up. Both of them will. So just to let people know, the line runs directly through Walgreens.
That's amazing. So who gets the taxes?
That's a good question. I don't know.
All right. Yeah, I saw an article once about some guy's house where a political boundary ran right through the middle of his house, and it caused no end of difficulties.
The boundary between New York and New Jersey runs, I think, not straight through Ellis Island, but it certainly complicates the issues of how that national monument is
Okay.
managed.
The next item on the agenda is board vacancies. We now, as I count them, we have 4 vacancies with several resignations, and so I ask you if you could suggest names of people in wards 4 and 7 from the Naval Academy. They would have to designate somebody, and at large. We have 4 vacancies that can be filled, and it would be nice for me to be able to provide the mayor with candidates that we have identified as interested and good people to occupy those vacancies. So I just make that as a request. You can contact me at your leisure. Next item on the agenda is reports. Now, I tagged several of you with hardly any warning, and so I don't know how much you have to report. But I will start myself on bicycles. This last week in the General Assembly, there was a meeting of the Environment and Transportation Committee to discuss and to hear testimony on Bill HB 0519, which is the bill which would reverse the default setting for the use of bicycles on sidewalks. If you remember, we recommended to the City Council, and the City Council recommended to the legislature that that provision in law be changed. And Dana Jones has now on 2 successive years proposed a bill that would do just that. This year, we had a very good hearing with testimony, none against, but 3 people testified for, I was one of them, for the bill. And it was a very interesting discussion. I believe that committee and the legislature in the General Assembly will have no trouble passing it. The problem is the Senate, and it's not a problem of opposition. We're unaware of any opposition in the Senate to passing this bicycle on sidewalks bill. The problem in the Senate always is getting their attention. They have such a full docket of things. Many legislative items never even get discussed or voted on. So Dana is going to do everything in her power to see that the Senate turns to this and passes it, because we need passage not only in the General Assembly, but also in the Senate before it goes to the governor. If we can get through those hurdles, I think we have a very good chance of accomplishing this and changing the statewide setting for bicycles on sidewalks. And just to remind you, the present rule is that bicycles are forbidden unless allowed by local authorities. This would reverse this to bicycles are allowed on sidewalks unless forbidden by local authorities. Any discussion on that? All right, the next thing, I wondered if Tom, if you have anything to add, with Elvia having stepped off the committee, you may be the electric vehicle person. Can you tell us anything about electric vehicles and what's going on in the city, or what should go on in the city?
I don't have anything personally to report. I think it's pretty common knowledge that one of the reasons Elvia stepped off was to work on an electrification plan for the city. So if there's an opportunity for me to share information from her or kind of pre-socialize ideas, I'm happy to do that. I certainly don't want to, disrupt the flow of her project. But I think, I would imagine we'll see some output from that as she, continues her work.
Well, it'd be very helpful if you can keep us in touch with what is happening. That's great. I'm about to acquire my first electric vehicle in about 5 days. So we'll see how that goes. Tara is not here, unfortunately, and she was on the agenda. So we'll have to skip over that. And so we have come rather quickly to new business and discussion around the table. And so I'd like to just go around, and everybody has a chance now to give us your ideas, suggestions, complaints. So starting with the list, Tara is not here. Taylor?
Nothing from me, thanks.
All right. And Beth Dolezal, I think, did not join us after all. Tom?
I just have one question, and really it could be answered by any of the either city council members or people from the transportation department. Maybe 6 months ago, when Brooks was speaking to us, he mentioned a concept for like a study or just an official kind of review of the intersection where Chinkapin Round Road and 665 and Forest Drive meet. And I'm just curious if that's like a budget item, or if that, if there's any type of official start or, outcome from that project.
Marcus, is this the transportation center we're talking about? Or something else?
Tom, you're speaking of the study for Chickapin as it reaches 665?
Yeah, and I can go back to the notes and bring it up next month if it requires more detail. And it was more of almost like an offhanded comment. He was speaking, that particular discussion was very centered on like surface street parking and kind of the concept of, do we really need all these parking spaces? In any event, it doesn't sound like it is ringing any bells. So let me go back to the notes and I'll pull that, and I'll have kind of a more detailed question next week or next month.
Okay. If you're able to email me whatever you're able to find, I can try to do a bit of research as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
In that regard, Brooks also has been the champion for a legislation that would relax parking requirements for restaurants. And I wonder what the status of that legislation is now. Karma, is that still alive? Has it been changed? Where is it?
He actually tabled it at the last city council meeting, because there are several amendments that people have put through. There's been a lot of discussion about it. So I believe for right now it's tabled for 90 days.
I see. Does that mean it will with certainty come back for rediscussion or not?
Fingers crossed.
All right.
But there were quite a few amendments that were being made, friendly amendments and whatnot, and suggestions for altering it. And it was really getting caught up in the outside dining legislation that we were trying to pass as well, the resolution. And so he had asked that it be tabled for right now.
Okay, thanks. I haven't followed the last couple of meetings, and so I was out of the loop on that. So it's good to be brought up to date. Next on the list is John Giannetti, who is not here. I don't think he's here. He hasn't been here for the last 4 meetings, I think. Charles Brooks is here. What's new? Charles, you're muted at the moment. Charles Brooks, can you hear us? You are muted at the moment. Well, there may be a temporary problem. We'll come back to Charles. The David DeQuincio.
Nothing new for me.
All right. Carol Kelly.
I have a couple of things. One is future looking, and certainly related to my slow movement in the past couple of years. I've been trying to make contact with the executive director figure of the Parole Town Center. And Rhonda, you may be amused to find out that I delayed on this setting up of a meeting so long that I didn't even know that Anthony Henry had long since disappeared as the person in that position. But I now have set up a meeting with his replacement and made it clear to her that I want to talk to her about transportation issues, certainly for the existing town center. And I will direct the conversation to my interest in what's going to happen with Riva Road and the expansion of the population on Riva Road, which is being built for as I speak. Marcus, I'd like to call your attention to this very small effort on my part, because if this is something that I get a good feedback on from the director, and find a way in which we can expand it to a discussion of ways that we might be able to increase ridership from these, these large population centers here at Parole Town Center, and also what will be across the street. I'd like to know whether you would be interested in that. The other thing is a small scale feature of the current situation, Marcus. I was somewhat critical, I think, in one of the most recent meetings in just assessing the quality of the service that I received on my one extended trip from Annapolis on a county bus to the light rail. I always forget the name of the station, which is an English figure in
Cromwell.
Right, thank you all. And I haven't made that trip again, but I certainly get a better feel for what is going on with the two systems, the small integration of the systems so far, just from riding around and talking to the bus drivers. And I do get on the county bus periodically to come into Annapolis in the Parole area. So that seems to be smoothing out in some of its wrinkles. And Wanda, Rhonda, if you have any thoughts about how to approach this larger parole matter, specifically in terms of transportation, that's how I presented myself to this lady, Christy Swanson, as an interested party. I'd be happy to hear.
Okay. Yes, Carol, thank you so much for bringing that up. I was meeting with Mr. Henry regularly, either every 2 to 3 months. We would schedule a meeting for about an hour, and I was not aware that he left until I'd sent him an email and it bounced back. So if you could, when you get a chance, can you send me the contact information for the new lady, and I will make contact with her. Part of the issue when it comes to transportation and even density when it comes to the Ward 3 residents, especially those in parole, is what is being built on the other side, which is Riva Road. We, of course, have Maris Apartments behind Double T Diner. We have households and units being built down further as you go where Eric used to be on Riva Road. And we're extremely concerned about the traffic issues that will be brought to bear upon us with the new construction. We're not opposed to the construction, but on the other hand, we have no control over it as well. And so when it comes to, and I'm not going to get into the workforce housing discussion, but when it comes to workforce housing, we all want that, but we don't want one ward bearing the brunt, for lack of a better term, of what goes on with the density, the transportation, the environmental concerns, the quality of life, and all those other things that we all expect from our city and our city government. So those are Anthony would always bring me up to date on what was happening. I was attending the meetings, even though they crossed over into the county. But for me, as I said earlier tonight, that line that runs through Walgreens is really an artificial line. It doesn't mean a whole lot. Most people don't even know about the line. And so I have to be cognizant of what the county does more than anybody else on the council, as to, even though we have no control, again, what is built over there, we do have to therefore make adjustments to what is being built in Ward 3 and what comes into Ward 3 for the obvious reasons. So thank you, Carl. So when you get a chance, would you please send me the contact information for that lady, please? I
Certainly.
appreciate it. But
I
thank
put
you for bringing that to our attention.
The meeting is several weeks ahead. Again, I'm still moving slowly,
Okay.
but I am looking forward to talking to her.
And also, we
Okay.
don't really know either what's going to go on at the Annapolis Mall. I've heard rumors, and I'm not going to bore you with rumors. But anyway, there may be more coming at the Annapolis Mall. So that's another concern of ours in Ward 3, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the item agenda is Vince Harriman, but he's not with us tonight. So that brings us to John Purnell in Florida. And if the weather turns very cold here, are you offering warm refuge for us?
You can all come down here and stay in my hotel room, no problem. It's going to be crowded,
Uh-huh.
but it's going to be warm, I'll tell you.
Right.
Also, I want to put in, I think Charles Brooks got his mute fixed. So do you want to let Charles go next?
Yeah, that would be very
don't
nice.
really have much for you, so you can go keep on going, John.
All right, thanks, Charles. I don't have much. I do have one thought that came to me during the meeting, and it's a question for Kurt. So, Kurt, do you think that the legislation that you wrote that has been adopted by the city and you're looking to get adopted by the state, does that apply to the bird scooters and bird bikes? Isn't that a good question?
That is a good question. And I don't believe electric bikes are treated differently from other bikes, but I really don't know. I'd have to look into that.
If you should look into that, because one of the things that I will point out is that all of those devices, the bird scooters, I'm sure of, the bird bikes, I think, have a sign that says "Do not use on the sidewalk."
Right. Yeah, I don't know
All right?
whether there's anything.
So if your legislation succeeds, we got to get those peeled off of there.
By the way, the bicycle community actually has
That's
a
all.
position on this, and it may be different from what most of us assume it is. And the position, simply stated, is that it's not the vehicle we are worried we need to control, it's the behavior we need to control, in this case, speed. And so the bicycle community, as represented by, I guess, Bike AAA in Anne Arundel County, their position is that they're quite happy to have electric bicycles on bicycle paths, so long as they don't present a danger to slower moving vehicles and pedestrians.
Because they have a governor on them and you know their max speed.
Well, I think these vehicles do have a speed control too, although
they do. They practically, the scooters can do about 15, and that's with me on them. Maybe you can do more with Carol on them, but with me, they only do 15. And that's fine, and I think that's good that these devices have a speed governor on them. But I think it might be worth you thinking about whether the legislation does or doesn't apply to these, and whether or not we need to remove the stickers.
Yeah, the first step would be to just understand what the present situation is. I frankly don't know whether these electric devices have any controls on them that are more severe than manual bicycles or not.
The scooters have brakes and an accelerator. That's it. So there's a throttle of sorts, but I normally just put it on max and go. There we go.
All right, good. So we need to get smart in that area. Thanks for raising that. Anything else, John? You're muted.
Not for me. I muted myself too early.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. If that's it, that's it. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right. All in favor?
All right.
Thank you so much for your participation, and we will see you next month. And those who can make it, please join us tomorrow afternoon for our meeting.